Felix, I don't know if I can ask you to begin on the question of our indebtedness to Nigeria and connecting that to the fact that the electricity problem now is actually not a technical problem. It's a finance problem.
Well, that is not entirely accurate.
He says we owe 100 million. We owe 100 million. I'm picking information that it's actually 120 million.
That's true.
Not 100.
Now, owing creditors is not an entirely new phenomenon. But to put the energy situation that we are in now down to that debt is most unfortunate. It is not accurate at all. Indeed, when the power minister explained what had caused the current energy shortages, he was definite in his pronouncements. He provided evidence of the equipment that had broken down. Subsequent to that, the president went round. Cameras followed him. You saw engineers fixing the problems. Only yesterday or the day before, the president was at Abuati, where the engineers told him that they expect that by June, a certain number or a certain quantity of electricity will become available for supply because they would have fixed the equipment. So wherein lies the claim that it is because we owe some amount of money to Nigeria that we have not been able to address the energy shortage. In times past, we have not owed monies, and the Nigerians have not given us gas. In fact, we have had to invoke our deliver or pay clauses in the agreements, and they've actually paid penalties, $10 million, $20 million sometimes. So it is not wholly accurate that it is because of this particular indebtedness that we are having this current challenge. Having said that, on the fiscal responsibility law, if I may come in at this point, like Honorable Rickett said, it is not something that the IMF has asked us to do. The debate about fiscal responsibility or the lack of it is a long-standing one. Every election year, we have had that difficulty. Indeed, I recall that the IE, long before...
Sincere apologies for that technical hitch, but thankfully we are back with very clear sound. Now, you were then talking about the Fiscal Responsibility Act debate and the fact that the IEA and several others had sought to, talk about it long before Bawumia spoke about it.
It is not something that government or any government that I can remember has been opposed to. The challenge has been practicalizing it and ensuring that we do not incur those deficits. Indeed, I pointed out before we went off that evidence shows that the deficit is actually declining, which is a sign of government efforts to consolidate on the fiscal space. Again, this year we hope to do much better than we did last year. And even as these IMF discussions go on, government will still take steps to ensure that we do not outspend our income. Indeed, President Mahama hinted at that a few weeks ago. It was completely taken out of context when he said that in election years, pressures have been brought to bear on governments to increase wages, for instance, and it's one of the things that has often accounted for the fiscal deficits. In fact, if you check the 2012 deficit, you will find that wages went through the roof, and that accounted in large parts for what we had. So government is determined to ensure that this time we keep a hold on expenditure so that we do not incur a deficit that we incurred. And this, in my view, is fairly straightforward and something that everybody can relate to. So it is not accurate at all that government is not doing what has to be done to ensure that we do not arrive at the difficult situation that we were in 2012. But as we speak, there is no, if you like, recommendation of a fiscal responsibility law on the table, even as we accept that we need to do things to ensure that we rein it in. Also, the finance minister, if I recall correctly, didn't say that there was no need for us to be responsible in terms of managing the deficit. He simply said that there were enough regulations in the Financial Administration Act and many other laws sitting in our books that should compel government to act in a way that forestalls the incurring of these deficits. The challenge has been complying with them. So henceforth, we will simply abide by those laws that exist. That's what the finance minister pointed out the last time Bawumia spoke here.
Thank you. Very interesting. Now, Kuku, I was asking Felix really about what Bawumia had to say about the real problem or challenge as far as the Dumsor situation is concerned. He said in page 18, the very last paragraph, that Mr. Chairman, the indebtedness of government has reflected in other sectors of the economy. In the energy sector, for example, the government is highly indebted to VRA and ECG. Government owes ECG some 700 million Ghana cedis, and the VRA owes the VRA some 1.0 billion Ghana cedis. This has compromised the balance sheet of VRA and its inability to import crude oil for generation of power. This situation has in turn forced VRA to overused the Akosombo Dam by 30% more than recommended since 2012, thereby causing the drop in the level of the dam. Mr. Chairman, the untold story about the erratic gas supply from Nigeria is that Ghana owes Nigeria gas USD 100 million. Nigeria gas is therefore dragging its feet with regards to the supply of gas while the amount is unpaid. Ultimately, the Dumsor problem is more of a financial problem than a technical one. Note, he says the untold story. We have been told about pipelines problems and very numerous other problems, except this one.
I had heard this before Baumia's lecture. I think few social commentators had made similar points. If I recall my own friend, Mr. Pratt, on many occasions on Kwame Sefakai's Kokro program, I had heard him make the point about this whole thing, the bottom line being financial challenges. I have to be honest, I heard him, and then few others. I've been doing my own cross-checking and things. Let's pick this angle, the angle about the VRA overusing the dam, and find out whether it makes sense. One, we all know that the low level of the water level in terms of rainfall is part of it. But if you have that condition and you proceed to use the dam more than you ought to use technically, it affects the technical efficiency of the dam. Now, we have both diesel, that is thermal, and hydro. So VRA then is compelled to spend money which they have not been able to do, because I'm told they will tell you that there isn't enough money. So then the pressure on the hydro becomes more critical. It definitely will have some technical impact in terms of efficiency. So I'm not too sure that it is possible to dismiss this point Baumia has made. Indeed, a lot of VRA people say it in quiet, or the quiet. Unfortunately, some of them don't have the courage of conviction, and I don't blame them, to articulate this publicly. So for me, this is believable, because I have heard it beyond the man. And then, of course, the 100 million Ghana gas thing too, Nigeria gas indebted. There was an initial, well, I still haven't heard any serious confirmation of it from any government spokesperson, except to say that we should go to VRA and double check. That those were the lines coming. And that alone was indicative of the fact that there was something wrong there. It looks as...
I thought, sorry.
Yeah, no, do it. Why not?
I indicated that indebtedness is not an entirely new thing.
No, I'm not talking today. I'm not talking today. I'm talking in the wake of the Baumia lecture. These issues were asked of some government functionaries by journalists, and there was no direct response, no effort to provide an answer from government sources. Rather, some of the journalists were redirected to VRA, that you go and ask them. When indeed I thought government could easily have also given the information. So I'm not talking about what has happened today. Today, I think you are trying to do some shifting cultivation to accommodate. You are anticipating.
Entirely responsible for the electricity
situation. That is a general principle.
But he sought to create the impression that it's because we owe this money that we are unable to provide electricity.
You don't see him rather telling the Ghanaian people that there is a truth that has not been told.
But to what extent
and it has an effect.
To what extent has that debt contributed to the current situation?
Look, if we didn't have...
There is gas sitting at Abuadi that cannot be evacuated to the VRA plants at Abuadi because the plants have broken down. It is because those plants are not on stream.
So the problem you are saying, there are many problems. You're saying in effect that the problem is not compounded by the indebtedness to Nigeria gas.
Of course, if we didn't have,
supplying.
I'm saying that if we didn't have debts and we were supplying gas regularly, of course there can be some relief. Again, there have been times when we have not owed them. They have simply not delivered the gas, and they have paid penalties.
Okay.
So erratic supply from Nigeria is a long-standing problem.
Okay. Yes.
We should admit that it is a combination of factors. One of which is this.
Yeah, but didn't present it that way. he sought to create the impression that it is because of this debt.
I'm not sure he
presented
singled
it.
out this $100 million thing, indebtedness, and suggested that that is exclusively the
He
reason
spoke about
why.
the 700,
I'm not sure he did that.
million
We have to be
Against
honest.
VRA indebtedness is a long-standing difficulty.
Which
In
I
opposition, we were brandishing documents,
Fantastic.
$500 million.
Fantastic.
The VRA was, oh yes, a
I
long-standing
recall
difficulty,
when
but it has to do
Akufo-Addo-
with management of that
right.
sector.
I recall
As
when
opposed to-
Akufo-Addo
Yeah,
launched.
it's okay. I'll
I
assure
recall
that.
when
Yeah.
Akufo-Addo told the world that the MPP administration was interested in launching the Northern Development Fund with a 1 billion cedis thing. Our old friend, the president, said, look, go and put that money in VRA and resolve your indebtedness in order to cure the energy mischief. That's the kind of politics we do here. But the point really is that Bamia's case ought to be considered seriously. Look, if you have a situation where about 4 or 5 machines or plants suddenly get faulty,
At the same time,
it's weird. And it must tell you that there may be, and I'm just I'm making an uneducated submission here. It's because maybe they are all being overused at a certain particular period. The hydrothermal combination perhaps have been turned upside down. So when you overuse those machines, they are likely to develop faults. Because look, 3, 4, 5 at the same time, something is wrong. And that's why some people began even to question the technical competence of the people involved. And their response on the quiet was that, look here, we are technically efficient and competent. It's that we don't have enough cash to buy fuel, to power. And when we overuse it, it creates problems for the machines. There's some truth in there, and that truth is captured in the Bawumia paper.
Dominic, like Felix is saying, this is just a fraction of the problem, and to place it before the public as though that is what the problem really is, because he ends by saying, ultimately, the Doomsor problem is more of a technical problem than it's more of a financial problem than a technical problem.
Bawumia is absolutely spot on. Bawumia gave 3 scenarios. One is that there's a story that has been told and an untold story. He thinks that the untold story is the fact that government owes VRA 1 billion Ghana and ECG 700 million Ghana, and then the Nigerians. That's what Bawumia said. Which of these figures are wrong? They are all spot on. In fact, he even underquoted the Nigerian scenario because government has not told us the $120 million is not true. So it is not true that government owes the Nigerians about $120 million. Let me say something.
Do you know, how did we come to owe this much?
I'm coming. If Asogle is working well, T1, T2 is actually working well. They have enough gas. Then the thermal plant is working well. Trust me, the 24 hours that we of Doomsor,
24 hours of doom,
and then the
12 hours of
12 hours of Saw, which translates to 22 days in a month of doom, and 7 days in a month of Saw will not happen. So Bawumia is absolutely spot on. 2 things. During the Kufuor administration, VRA was regularly giving money to be able to buy crude. And that is the truth. Today, we are overusing and we are also overusing the Akosombo. And that is a fact. Give VRA enough money, like what they did during the World Cup. VRA can actually buy crude, power, like what happened during the World Cup, what happened during Christmas, and what happened when the president was delivering the State of the Nation. VRA was able to buy from Ivory Coast to supplement what they had. And so it's all about money. Maybe, just maybe, that we will still be having the Doomsor, but the number of hours of doom that we have will be reduced. And you just accept that it's more financial than technical. Now let's go and see what Bawumia said, and people are knocking their heads and not knocking their heads. I want government and the 2 people in government here to confirm whether the VRA is not using Akosombo by more than 30% that they're supposed to. 2, they should confirm it, whether we don't owe the Nigerians. 3, they should confirm whether we don't owe VRA or we don't owe ECG. The biggest problem of ECG...
They have not controverted it. Why do you want to invite them to?
You know what? The biggest problem of ECG are two: money and the distribution, the loss of power. Because a lot of the equipments are beginning to have problems because we are using them, we're not replacing them. Once you owe them, once you owe ECG, for example, they begin to have problems.
Okay.
The distribution lines
now
just
wrap up on this issue. Tell me, what's the point in telling us these problems?
The point in telling us is that government is not managing the energy sector well. Government is not telling us the truth concerning the energy sector, and they need to come out clean. That's the first thing. And that government is telling us, like exactly what he said, that you want an emergency power, and you go and sign it for 10 years from Turkey. When the problem is actually 2 years, because if the president's promise is to be believed, in the next 3 years, we would actually have enough, we'll actually generate enough more than we need, because as of now, we need about 2,600 megawatts. If we put the Asogle, expansion of Asogle, we put the thermal plants, we also put in the plants that are being generated at T3, we'll actually be crossing the 3,000 mark. And so why do you go to sign an emergency power for 10 years when you actually need it for 2 years?
But it's not exactly 10 years, is it? It's 5 years, and then with a option of extension.
But it's always automatic.
So let's just be factual.
With that 5 years, but it's always automatic. But secondly, if you have 100 million to guarantee, if you have 100 million to guarantee for the emergency power, when the VRA, for the expansion of VRA, and that what we call the sent power, they need just about the same figure to be able to put to add the same capacity.
And at this point, he was talking about ballooning and unsustainable public debt.